Graphs tell stories. First of all, who am I? My name is Blarim, and I work for Netways, and I do lots of stuff regarding product management for integrations and partners and this kind of stuff. Formerly, I've been a systems engineer originally I come from the operator side of view, and currently, trying to develop stuff. But today I don't want to talk about me, because I hate it. I want to talk about someone else. I'd like to introduce you Dave. Dave is in his early 20s, and he's highly motivated because he just started his new job at this new and strange IT company. And his motivation is really big, and he wants to be the best operator the company has ever seen. So like every one of us at some time had this motivation, I think, just to be the best and do the things right. Everyone else messed up. And he has he gained some insights into troubleshooting and working on other projects, and he just started like 6 months ago, and now he has his first own project where he was very happy about it, because that's where he can show what he can do to the others. He learned a lot from his colleagues who told him about debugging and doing projects on his own, taking care about things. So he's pretty excited to work with this new customer who has a new web application, and he's supposed to host that web application. It's a pretty simple setup. It's just a couple of web servers and a couple of database servers, just for redundancies. So nothing special. So for most of us. For Dave, obviously it's something special because it's his own first project. And everything goes well, as Dave expected. And everything works well, and he's happy because the web application works and everyone has access to it. Everything goes smoothly, which is a huge step, because that's not normal every time. So for example, 17% of the projects go so badly that they threaten the existence of a company. So a clap for Dave. He didn't threat the existence of the company. But like things go in IT, usually everything you build will break at some time. So it's just a matter of time until something breaks. Independent from what it is, it's just a matter of time. So this is what happened to Dave's project. After 3 months, something broke. And you can see here, he's not so happy anymore about it. And it's a pretty strange behavior, because generally everything works quite well, but sporadically some requests to the web application just fail. Like always, it's just a matter of time. Generally it works, sometimes it fails. But gladly he got an alert about this before the customer noticed. This is a good thing, because there was his colleague Eve earlier telling him about Icinga, which is pretty great, because Dave started to use it for his new project, and he was alerted. The monitoring tool checked the web application if everything is available, if everything is working well. He noticed before the customer did. He can consult with the customer for the next steps. And earlier that time, Eve told him, obviously you need Icinga because it's independent. So you don't rely on your web application to tell you if it's broken. It's a view from the external side to just check it if it's really working. So from the customer view. And the other thing is, Eve told Dave, is that you have a nice overview. So you can see every host, you can see every service, you can exactly see what is going on in your infrastructure, and that's pretty nice. But the most important part for Dave was the alerting part of Icinga, because this is the way how he could take note about things that go wrong before the customer actually does. And that is really important if you're running something for someone else. The bad thing about this is that Dave couldn't find a pattern in these failures, so it's just sporadically. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't. So there's nothing obvious about the problem. But what he does see is that there is a problem with going on with MySQL, but he's not seeing what exactly the problem is. Usually people refer to this as the Whitebox versus Blackbox monitoring. So where the Blackbox monitoring is just checking the availability of something, if it's working generally. The other side of the monitoring is the Whitebox monitoring, where you have a deep inspection of how things behave. So I'm talking about graphs, logs, and this kind of stuff. Just a sec. So for me, there is no such thing like Whitebox versus Blackbox monitoring, but because usually you need both of them. And he learned about that when he talked to his new colleague, Laura, because she tells him about graphite, which is exactly that, what he needs in this moment. At least Laura says so, because graphing and metrics are the only truth in your monitoring system. It's nice that you have alerts, but what you really need is graphite or metrics in general, because you want to see what is happening in your infrastructure. And that was the recommendation of Laura, his colleague. Graphing is nice, she told him, because you see the performance, the behavior of your application, how it behaved in the past, how it changed from the past to now, what happened exactly. So you can see the history of things. You can share these data with your colleagues and just see what happened in the past and what possibly could go wrong. So if it's a CPU problem, if it's a load problem, I don't know, whatever. And you can detect anomalies in graphs. So you don't just see what happens, but there's a high chance that you as a human can see if something goes a different way than it was before. That's why graphs, are so great. So Dave started with graphite, obviously. He has this connector to Icinga, and this works quite well. So it's a combination of Whitebox and Blackbox monitoring, because he gets alerted about the failure of the web application, and also can see the insights of what is happening on the systems. And that's pretty nice. But the bad thing about this is when he started with graphite, his dashboard looked like this, and this is pretty bad. So he can see some data, but it's not a really nice view. So in the end, he has nice graphs, he has nice metrics, but he still cannot solve the problem. So he cannot see what actually is causing this. So what is the root cause of this problem? So Dave goes to the next colleague, and Ben tells him about, your Icinga and graphite is really nice, but what you really need is logging, because logging is the real truth of your of everything what is happening in your infrastructure. And what you need is centralized logging, because this way you can correlate the data. If you have many servers, you don't have to connect to every server one by one. You can just see it in one interface. You will have a deep insight into what is actually happening on your application side. And if there's an error, you will find it in your error logs. Because logging is the truth of everything. And the other nice thing is that you have an overall overview. So if you have centralized logging, you can see every log on one interface. And Dave tries it out. He's kind of overwhelmed by all this data. There are so many logs in there, and he's not feeling like he's finding the root cause, because there's so much logs in there. He's feeling like he's searching for the needle in the haystack. But the other problem is that he doesn't even know about what the needle looks like. So he's just searching for something. He's trying to filter stuff, to find out something, to look just for errors. But he cannot find any error message or any warning message that could lead him to the root cause of this. So in some point, Dave comes to the conclusion that probably all these tools are pretty great. But what could solve his problem is maybe just to correlate all these data. So your black box monitoring with your white box monitoring, your alerting data with your metrics, with your logging, maybe in one interface. So maybe if he views all this data in one interface, maybe then he can find out what is happening actually in this, so what the problem actually is, and find the root cause of it. And that's when he comes up with Grafana. Grafana is pretty nice because it can combine all these stuffs. It has a much better overview for graphite metrics, so you can really easily create graphs in it with the same data you have already stored in graphite. And as you can see here, he created a dashboard, and it shows already some strange patterns over here and in the memory graph as well. So it's not always the same pattern because the time differs, but obviously something is strange here, and that's what I call an anomaly, or what is called an anomaly, and you can see it as a human right there, without thinking about it. And what makes Grafana really great is that it has not only one data source, so you don't have to choose between data sources. You can use multiple data sources on your dashboards. So Grafana is shipped with a lot of data sources by default, and you can even extend it with your own or with other plugins to use even other data sources. The most important ones for Dave are Graphite and Elasticsearch, because in Elasticsearch he has his logging data, and in Graphite he has his metrics. So that should work for him. What he's actually doing is that he's doing his monitoring with Icinga, and he's shipping all the metrics data to Graphite, and he's shipping events, so notifications, downtimes, acknowledgements, whatever, to Elasticsearch. So these are the two data sources he uses. And what he's doing as well is that he ships all the logs from the servers to Elasticsearch as well. So he has everything on two sources, and yeah, then he tries to combine it, starting with Icinga. So I'm just showing the load graph because this is where you can see it best, what is happening. Here we have a here we show the notifications of Icinga as annotations. So the annotation feature of Grafana just displays certain data to you that you can filter. Dave uses a filter for Elasticsearch where he searches only for notifications of Icinga. And yeah, you can see that every time when the load drops, he gets a notification that tells him the web application is broken. So he can correlate that, obviously, when the load drops, he gets a notification. So this must have to do something with his problem. So he can verify that, yes, this load graph is somehow is somehow related to his problem. And the next thing he does is, because he has lots of more logs stored, he cannot use only the Icinga stuff, but he can use also his system logs. So every log message that is stored in Elasticsearch, you can display here. Let's say, for example, users logged in, cron jobs, configuration management runs, everything that you have in your logs. You can filter and display it here. And what Dave does is that he displays the users logged in to the system on this graph, just to see if there's a combination. And as you can see here, right before someone logs in, the load drops. And that may be obvious because human error is a really big cause of outages. 22% actually of data center outages are caused by human error. So probably it's just someone logging in, doing some stuff, and it breaks. So he goes further and displays the username of the user who is actually logging in. And as you can see, yeah, it's Dave himself. So you could say maybe he's causing the problem himself, but that is not what's happening, because there's another login here. It's the same one, and it's not correlated. It's not related to the outage. So yeah, probably he just was doing some troubleshooting, and it was just a coincidence. Whatever. The next thing Dave tries to do is to display what configuration management is actually doing. So they are using Puppet on the infrastructure. So he starts to display every Puppet run that is happening. So yeah, he sees now that every 15 minutes Puppet is doing something. That's nice to see. Puppet works as expected, obviously, but this is not very helpful because you cannot see anything. So the next thing he tries to do is to filter everything out that doesn't do anything. So display only the things that actually do changes. And after that, you can see that every time Puppet runs, the load drops. On the next Puppet run, the load goes up again. So it seems like Puppet is doing something, and something breaks, and Puppet is fixing something, and it works again, and on and on and on. So that may be something. And the same thing he did with the user logins, like displaying who is actually logging in. He can do the same thing with the configuration management tool, so he can see what Puppet is actually changing here. By just adding some more information. If you cannot read it, it says here that Puppet is changing the ownership of varlib MySQL directory from the user MySQL to the user root during runtime. So who knows what happens if you change the ownership during runtime for MySQL. So the application won't break. MySQL will still keep on running. You are able to log in, so you can check it. What you cannot do is you cannot select any data, you cannot insert any data, you cannot do anything because you just don't have any permission. The other interesting thing is that you won't see by default anything in the logs. If you log in and try to do something, it will give you a message, but it won't log anything. That's why it didn't find anything. So yeah, from human error to automatic error, I found this really old tweet by DevOps Borat that says to make errors human, and that's true. To propagate error to all servers automatic way is DevOps, and that's true as well. So yeah, he's coming closer to his problem. He now has found out that there is something happening there. Puppet is doing something. Puppet is changing ownerships back and fixing it as well. And in this case, he was only able to find this out because he used multiple data sources in Grafana. So this is a pretty simple example to just demonstrate how you can use multiple data sources in combination in Grafana. There is a lot more that you can do. The key takeaway of this is that you can add more value to your graphs by just adding more data sources into it. You can actually see the timeline of what is happening there, and you don't have to open multiple browser tabs or whatever to navigate through more than one tools. You can just see it in one interface. And yeah, that was just a pretty simple example, and you can do even more with it if you're an Icinga user. You can even store some metadata into Graphite and display, for example, the thresholds you set for your services and hosts. And you can exactly see when a value was over a threshold. Other things that you can do is that you can add even downtimes and acknowledgements and all this kind of stuff. Every notification that is happening, you can add this data to your graphs and actually see that there was a time range where a downtime was set. And this might be helpful when troubleshooting for something. So yeah, there's lots of stuff that you can do. This was just a pretty simple example to demonstrate that. I am aware that there are other possibilities how Dave could have solved his problem. But yes, this was his approach, and for him it worked. And that's how Dave comes closer to be the best operator in his company. Thank you very much. I think we have time for some questions, right?
Of course we have. Any questions to Blarim? Okay.
I can repeat the question.
Pardon?
I can repeat it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question was if it's possible to use other time series databases other than Graphite. And yes, it is possible. So Icinga 2 currently supports Graphite, InfluxDB, OpenTSDB, and Elasticsearch for time series data. So for metrics and performance data. And RRD files. Don't use that. All right.
More questions? We have plenty of time, which is not Blarim's fault, it's my fault. Okay. I come over, it's better. And we have time.
How complicated is it to set markers regarding to log events in Elasticsearch? So you have to filter for a certain pattern and then define this pattern as a marker in Grafana?
Yeah. So what you do is that you create a annotation in your Grafana dashboard, and you can just put your Lucene query into that filter, and depending on what the filter receives as a result, so Grafana will directly connect to your Elasticsearch, run that Lucene query, and display every result as a marker. And the other thing that you can do is that you can pick certain fields of your document and display them on mouse over. So for example, the user logged in and you can show a mark, and you can display the field username by hovering with the mouse. Yeah.
More questions?
Over there. Behind you.
Oh, sorry, Robert.
Hi, Dave chose Graphite. From a perspective, there's also InfluxDB. Is it better to use the one or the other? Is there some differences you might know?
So, probably it depends on what you like more. The only disadvantage, what I don't like about InfluxDB is it's a great product, but the only thing I don't like about it is that the clustering feature is enterprise only. But if you're willing to pay for it, you can go for it. Absolutely, it's a great tool. All right then.
Thank you very much again.